Miss Marvel, what are we going to do? This is episode 4. So Kamala is traveling to go see her grandma. So they're going back to Pakistan, and here we are. Like, the intro is actually really cool, where the panning shot into the plane, like, it's really cool to see it all pan in and everyone sort of, just going about their day and seeing the sort of dreary faces as they are on the plane. And no one really likes to be in economy as they're traveling, which I'm assuming is quite a long flight. Family just sort of picked up whatever they were doing, like stopped and just traveled back to go see grandma. Like, they still don't know that Kamala has powers and stuff. They were just like, yeah, grandma wants us to go, so we'll just pack up and go. Like, I would have liked to see a little bit why they wanted to go. Like, I know they probably do want to go see family, but there's been no hinting, and there's been a little bit of conflict between Kamala and the mum about obviously talking about the family history, but then I was like, let's go. Everyone just pack your bags and we're going to travel there. So I'm not sure where they're sort of like focusing that part of the story, but I know they need to further the plot. We are episode 4, there's only 2 to go, so I guess that's one way to sort of further this plot. Do meet the grandma. I do like to see that old sort of person stereotype where they're just blunt, and it does really build that humour. So she just, calls everything like it is, and then she's actually giving Kamala like the backstory, and instead of photos, she's actually got her like drawings and her art. Like, it was a cool little way to show some with her like art style coming in, and sort of not having to have a person, but obviously they can just have the picture so that Kamala can sort of see who they're referring to. And we sort of get that picture as well, because they haven't actually shown the character that they're referring to in it, but we do get to see obviously the resemblance. Such a cool shot. So when Kamala's out and about, so they're just traveling around, we're back into that sort of slice of life going on, and I'm getting a little bit over that slice of life, but they're in the marketplace and she's looking for the train station, and this guy's trying to give her direction, and there's this whole one shot where the camera's panning around. It was really good to be able to see her confusion, and like the guy was just giving her all sorts of random directions, and you can see the points where Kamala is just becoming really confused, and you become a little bit disorientated as well, and that whole thing just comes together to actually show that confusion. That was such an awesome shot. Like, the camera techniques that are coming into it are really improving as they go, but obviously the story is still quite lacking. When we do get to the train station, we do get to see Kamala finally use her powers. Like, this wasn't drag out for 30 minutes and have like a 10-minute action scene, where there was actually integrating action into it, where I would have liked to see her sort of training and getting used to her powers, but they just seem to sort of come out of nowhere, and she's like, no worries, I know how to use my powers, and she was able to use it like really effectively. The new guy from the Red Daggers, like, he was pretty cool. He was throwing things, and he was having some good lines. Like, they were both having a little bit of comedy. Didn't actually feel forced this time. So like, when they're actually throwing daggers and dropping things here and there, like, it actually felt like a fun action comedy going on rather than the forced one-liners. Production of the Red Daggers was really cool. I did like the Terminator line, "Come with me if you want to live." And they do poke fun of it, so that was a nice sort of touch to the comedy side that they are trying to bring into it, where Red Daggers were actually felt a little bit too much like the old Assassin's Creed, so it's felt like Altair's sort of storyline if you played the Assassin's Creed first game. But like, the reveal of the Red Daggers hideout was really cool. So like, obviously the transition between the dark dingy kitchen into the actual like magnificent hideout palace, that was cool. But the main like guy who's in charge of the Red Daggers, he did give off the sort of Assassin's Creed vibe, where he was like pulling out new technology and stuff, but it felt like they had the power of the Eden apple that was in the Assassin's Creed. Like, there was a little bit too much familiarity there for me, but overall, like, it was a cool transition to see the hideout and the dark sort of entrance way to obviously hide the old Red Daggers, where they just hide themselves with a red bandana, which, like, yeah, I feel like half your face you can sort of probably pick you out a little bit, but they are hiding half their face, so you got half the chance to be seen. It does finally feel like there's actually like a little bit of danger for our main characters. Like, it does kind of feel like there's a villain now. Obviously the mum and her crew, the Carsteins, they're out and about, so they've broken out of their FBI holding. But like, the transition of time, they just all of a sudden pop up into it, and like, there's no sort of showing the passage of time of how much time they've actually spent there, or how much time Kamala's spent in this hideout. But all of a sudden they just appear out of nowhere after their big jailbreak. Like, how'd they get there? They just, like, don't worry about it, they're just there, to the point where we have a nice little fun action sequence. But there was a number of things wrong with the action sequence. Like, I know that finally we got a little bit of danger for Kamala and we get to see her use her powers, but the actual chase scene, like, if she knows how to use her powers and there's a car running in a tight little, like, anyway, wouldn't you just put it like a crystal wall, or like use your powers to make a blockage or anything? Like, come on, you just naturally took this guy on one-on-one who's had like assassin training, and you just couldn't like pop up a magical wall or something to stop these guys chasing you. Like, they would have stopped that entire sequence from happening and like kept you to progress to finding out the history of the bangle and like where your powers come from. It's just the pacing of this show is so all over the place. Like, they're either focusing too much on the slice of life, or they'll swap and change in between a little bit of action, a little bit of slice of life. Like, surely for a superhero fit like TV show, wouldn't we get more sort of, you know, a little bit of danger, a little bit of powers, rather than just the cultural aspect of seeing her go about her day-to-day life? Like, it was cool to see it in the first episode because you're establishing it, but now we're like 4 episodes in, we can sort of back that off, and now we can actually delve into the mystery of the bangle and where her powers are coming from, and why the Castines are sort of chasing it. And it just needs to be able to not drip feed us, but less time on the cultural aspects and the slice of life, and more on the actual superhero powers. There were a couple of like visual effects. I feel like they spent majority of their time and budget on the actual powers and the actual chase scene, but when like Kamala's up with her grandma just like looking out over the rooftop, it felt really off-putting in terms of how not pixelated, but like how janky the actual background looked. Like, it just felt out of place. It felt like we were back in the early 2000s with our green screening technology, rather than what we can sort of do nowadays. Everyone's so confused about the origins of this bangle and all these people. Like, there's no point where anyone's like really clear about it. Like, surely someone knows, surely there's people all about it that's able to give us that information that we're looking for, so we can sort of progress a little bit rather than that drip feed. But it does end, the end scene is really cool, like where we get that nice jump cut, and then we get to see Kamala in the actual train station that we've been sort of hinting at throughout this entire episode. And you can see the chaos and the hustle bustle and the panning out shot, and just seeing all like the mobs of people going about their day trying to get to the train station. That was such a cool way to end it, where this wasn't the worst episode, but it was better than last episode. And they've got 2 to go. Like, they need to finish strong. I need some more information on the bangle and the origins of it, and see some more like superhero stuff going on, because at the moment it's a slice of life with a very small portion of superhero stuff going on. So yeah, it just needs to get better. I can't recommend this show yet. Like, it still hasn't found its feet. It needs to do something. But if I've got to rate it out of 5, it's probably like, this episode is probably a 2.5 at best. It's only 2.5 because there were actually some really cool shots, and it's hopefully building to something. So I'm giving it that half for, you know, hope. So yeah, you know what to do. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends.